what athletes we are a bit bullish on looking at this upcoming season now that we're a couple parts done, and then run through a couple news clips from the Fantasy Fitnessing from the Rack quick news clips section of our website. So a little update from the Rack, Dave.
Yeah, so From the Rack, kind of a bite-sized news site on fantasyfitnessing.com. Just right up at the top, you'll see From the Rack listed there. Just an easy way to follow all the news that's going on in the world of CrossFit. So first up, Phil Toon has a broken thumb. He's not sure when he broke his thumb, but I think really the only impact to his training is that he's not using hook grip like all us regular folks. So probably shouldn't impact him for the rest of the season. And then also in injury news, David Shrunky completed the first two workouts of quarterfinals, but didn't complete the rest. And it turns out it's because of knee surgery. Not sure what the extent of the injury is, but looks like he's obviously done for the year without finishing quarterfinals. And this is his second year in a row without being able to complete the season due to injury. So I think he's on the wrong side of 30 in terms of age in CrossFit. So this may be the end of the line from his individual competitive career, but still coaching Emmental in her pursuit of the games this year. Competition news: Madrid CrossFit Championship announced their prize purse this week. Looks to be pretty close to a double of last year, with the lead individual champion will be taking home 30,000 euros this year, as opposed to the 15,000 that Krenikov and Solveig Sigurdardottir took home in 2021. And then in terms of some more crossover athletes, Jason Smith, the 7 times games champion out of South Africa, or games competitor out of South Africa, was competing in a boxing match this past weekend, which seems a bit interesting ahead of semifinals. And then 4 times CrossFit Games athlete Maddie Sturt was on a track team that won the state championship in Victoria this past weekend. So, it's success from her in cycling. So, that is From the Rack for this week.
Awesome. Thanks. Those are fun little snippets of news pieces of different athletes using their fitness in different ways and who's hurt. So, on to who you are bullish about for the season. Guilherme Malheiros is on top of your list.
Yeah, so Guy finished, I guess, second worldwide in quarterfinals there, which was a bit of a surprise, definitely for me. I think a lot of people expected him to win South America, but for him to come out and finish that highly on the world leaderboard, which, kind of the one thing that got me or thought more upside about this performance than last week was just looking at his individual event finishes. You kind of expected him to shoot the lights out on the lift just because the guy can lift a house. But the other total, I guess, was his third best finish of the competition. So he was second in event 5, and I think he had another event or top 10 in there. So for him to have the lift as his third best finish in quarterfinals makes me think that some of those holes that he had last year in his game have been closed. So definitely will kind of moving him up my rankings going into the season. Yeah,
that's great to see from him. And then next up is Haley Adams.
Yeah, I guess also from Mayhem here. So what got me with Haley Adams, I guess I can't remember. I think she was top 20 or so within quarterfinals. So nothing spectacular from her there. I think just having a 5-event competition, having a sole strength piece definitely hurts her since she's not the strongest athlete there. But from Haley Adams last year on the 4RM front squat, which was the strength event in quarterfinals, I think she was about 517th, whereas in the other total this year, she was 261st. So basically just chopping that score in half just shows that she's continuing to improve her strength. So while she's never going to be that, elite strength athlete, having that progress will give her, instead of a 14th in event with a heavy clean, it might be a 10th, or when it is that 1RM strength event at the Saturday night, she's getting, a couple spaces higher. And so over the course of the CrossFit Games, when there is those, handful of strength events, if she can get an extra 5-10 points in each of those events, that could be the difference from fourth in a podium spot or fifth from fourth. So just depending on how the events play out, she's going to, be in the top 3 in a running event. But if she's able to, grind out, an extra 10-15 points every time there's a heavy barbell, that's going to make a huge difference for her over the course of 4 days.
Yeah, that's going to make like a massive difference for her. And it's interesting just seeing all the other females come out of the team divisions and they can all lift a lot. It's kind of interesting to see that Haley Adams was sort of the first one to come out of the team division, and that's actually one of her weaknesses. So
yeah, and like when you stack her up against kind of that, the behind Tia group. So you got Kara Saunders, Gabrielle Magallo, Laura Horvath, Mallory O'Brien, Brooke Wells, like all of them can lift a ton. So like she is kind of on the other end of the athletic spectrum compared to all those athletes. So depending on how the chips fall with the programming, she's going to beat all of them in a running event. So if she can eke out a few points on the lifts compared to the past years, it could be the difference from her of getting on the podium.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Speaking of somebody else that can lift a lot is Noah Olsen.
Yeah, Noah Olsen. So 10th place finisher at the games last year. Again, also kind of in that 30-year-old ballpark in terms of athletic performance. After seeing him in the Open, wasn't super excited about Noah Olsen going into the season, but having seen his quarterfinals, he was, I think, top 5 or 6 in North America, and he was one of those guys that got assessed a major penalty on the pistols. So just seeing that level of performance from him, even with that penalty, I think he's all in again this season, making a run for it, and then score some karma points for just dropping into a local CrossFit class this week as well, and just doing the programming with the rest of the class, which is always cool to see from these elite athletes.
Yeah, I love it when they're like normal CrossFitters.
Yeah.
Another sort of injury comeback is Jamie Simmons.
Yeah, Jamie Simmons. We talked about her after the our quarterfinal show last week. So she had in the first 3 events some elite performances. So I think she was a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th in Oceania last week in events 1 through 3, and then was 30 plus in the other total and event 5, which had the snatches at the end. So to me, it was kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde performance. Sounds like some elite performances that we would expect from her, and then some other ones on the other end. And so she ended up sharing this week that she did take it somewhat cautiously going into those events. So giving her another, I think, 7 weeks until Torian to rehab the shoulder, strengthen the shoulder. It will be interesting to see how that semifinal plays out. I think it's going to be Tia and Kara taking in the first 2 spots, just based off their performances so far this season. And it could be a pretty big grudge match between Jamie Simmons and Ellie Turner for that last spot. Not to mention Maddie Sturt, who's, again, also been to the games 4 times and was 3rd at Last Chance qualifier last year. So it's probably the semifinal I'm looking forward to the most, just to see the competition among these 5 women for those qualifying spots. Not to mention the men's side's also going to be crazy for those 3 spots. But yeah, I like the Jamie Simmons, and hopefully she's able to get some of that strength back for Torian.
Yeah, I think I always like it when you see an athlete like making some smart, calculated choices. She didn't have to sell her soul in those last couple of workouts in order to make the top 30 to get to Torian. So take the time, make sure you're in good shape for when it matters. So that's awesome. Like, tough to see, but awesome that smart choices are being made for her comeback year. And then another injury comeback is Brooke Wells.
Yeah, Brooke Wells. She was 5th in North America in quarterfinals or something along those lines. So kind of what we would see for Brooke Wells. I think the one thing that stood out here for me was that she was asked, shared on Instagram about, how her recovery is going. And to say that her elbow is, 80, 90%, but still finish in a top 5 position, it just seems like that she's still not fully back, but she is still, performing with the kind of the best of the group there. So, if she can get that extra 10 to 20% back in her arm in the next 8 weeks, or at least at semifinals, even at how she is, she would advance to the games. But yeah, extend that out to 4 months more from a recovery timeline to get back to Madison. I think, she is definitely in that top 5 podium mix there on the women's side.
Yeah. And then again, it's just nice to hear like her qualifying that she knows she's not 100% back. She knows where she is. There's obviously a plan in place and supports in place to get her to 100%, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then back to the men's side a little bit on Sam Quant.
Yeah, Sam Quant. So he ended up making a ton of changes last year after Mac. Looks like he moved from Boston back home, working on the farm with his brother. And so just to see him finish 9th on the North American men's field, makes me excited to see him again. Like after seeing him compete last year at that open announcement next to Medeiros, where he was just, gassed halfway through it, and him bowing out early in semifinals, kind of, the star lustered a bit on him. So seeing him come back with the 9th place, makes me see that, that 2nd place finish a few years ago wasn't a fluke, and he does have that elite talent to compete with the best.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to see him kind of excel in a year that doesn't have an asterisk behind it. So, yeah, that's great to see. And then a little European action here with Solveig Sigurdardottir.
Yeah, so she was 8th place finisher in Europe. So good to see her kind of top 10, which is who we'll see advance to the games. So, if everything holds, we'll see her in Madison. But she's someone that, I highlighted back in our pre-open podcast. She was a 3rd place finisher on Team Goad at Wadapalooza on the team. So that was behind Team Krieger and Mayfem. So, a couple elite teams there. And she did win that Madrid CrossFit Championship in the fall. So she seems to be, hitting her stride, obviously having the best season. But she also is training with a program with Megala and Jacqueline Dahlstrom, who were also top 10 in Europe for quarterfinals as well. So again, like to see, 3 training partners hitting their stride, being in the top 10. Hopefully she's able to make that games appearance after semifinals.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see another daughter in the mix. And then Willy Georges.
Yeah, so Willie Georges, so he was 2nd in Europe in quarterfinals as well, behind BKG, and was 7th in the Open in terms of European men athletes as well, with I think BKG and Koski were the only games athletes from last year to beat him in the Open. So it's good to see him come back. He was also out last year with his shoulder. So again, having, a full year to strengthen rehab definitely shows, with his performance there. And I like, just him coming back. I think the European men's field is wide open. I think there was only 4 games athletes that finished in the top 10 of quarterfinals. And just, that trio of, Upnix and Henrik Hapnalainen and Andre Houdet, who are all, I think they're all top 20, top 25 at the games last year. You haven't really shown me that they're taking that next step this year. So with the European field completely wide open for those 10 spots, I think, I should say 7 spots. I think BKG, Koski, and Lazar Ducic are probably going to be your for sure things, as for sure as CrossFit can be. Willie George is just based off his performance so far this season. He's probably at the top of the pack for those remaining 7 spots.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. Yes, that European men's field there's lots of names in the mix. Let's just see who comes out on top. Yeah,
and it being an in-person competition this year, I think, if last year's competitions were in person. I'm not sure we would see the same 10 men make it to Madison. So, it'll be interesting to see who's in the mix this year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, we're switching to both being in person. So exciting.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's all for this week. So go have some fun fitnessing and make sure you give us a follow on Instagram at Fantasy Fitnessing. And our semi-final games are going to be announced via email. If you have an account at fantasyfitnessing.com, we will send that out to you right away so you won't miss any of the fantasy games for the semifinals. Make sure that you're logged in there.